So the last 2 weeks, we were starting on the third class, which was the plant-based, no, the Pescatarian and Pollatarian. So let me just pull those up here. So I think one of the key things to think about is if you're adding fish or chicken or other meat to the diet, that can help mitigate some of those nutrient deficiencies that we're going to talk about next week in the 5th class. And actually, if you're willing to go or to eat fish in your diet and you're willing to eat, say, omega-3 rich fish, so the salmon and the fatty fish, and also some of the shellfish, then that can help mitigate all of those nutrient deficiencies, really, because you can get the omega-3s from the fish, and you can get iron and B12 from the shellfish. So like clams and mussels and oysters, those are good, rich sources of the B12 and the iron. So that can definitely help mitigate a lot of those nutrient deficiencies. I do have a recipe on there, and this is the Fishy Friday for this week. It's a recipe that includes clams and oysters. And because they are so high in B12 and iron, you can actually just probably eat this recipe like almost just every other week or something like that and get a good amount of iron and B12 in your diet. But when we go through the slides for next week, the class for next week, that will really give us, I'll give you a lot more sources of B12 and some other ways to get iron into the diet as well. Let me see if there's any other high points. So if you did just eat chicken and vegetarian, you would not be getting the omega-3s that you need, because we do need some of those sources from fish. So that might be one of the reasons that you might want to supplement, like a fish oil, or if you're vegan, what they would call an algal oil or an algae oil, to get a lot of that B12 into the diet and mitigate that risk factor. Or I'm sorry, I said B12. Oh, I meant omega-3. Get the omega-3 in the diet. So, and then moving on, flexitarian. You know, I kind of simulate flexitarian and like Mediterranean, those types of diets that aren't high in meat. You're eating smaller amounts of meat than you would, you know, in a normal diet. But that helps you to get more plant-based and also to still get some of those good nutrients in that you need. So flexitarian, we don't want to call it lazy vegetarian, but you're eating, say, 9 to about 26, 28 ounces of meat per week. So up to 1 serving of meat per day of, you know, 3 to 4 ounces, or a lot less if you want to be more at that other end of only about 9 ounces of meat. But again, getting that meat or the fish and the other protein sources can help mitigate some of those nutrient deficiencies. And just a little bit more about flexitarian. It's based on these principles that you're going to eat mostly fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains. You're going to focus again on the plant sources of protein instead of the animals. You're going to be flexible and incorporate meat and animal products just kind of from time to time, but it won't be the usual thing that you're having every day. Of course, we want you to eat the least processed and trying to stay away from some of those more processed meats, the hot dogs, the deli meats, those type of things. Eating the you know, organic or kind of fresh from the farm, if you know a farmer, is going to be a little bit healthier for you. Limiting added sugars and sweets, so that's kind of a given in any diet. We want to try to reduce those sugars and sweets. And those benefits, again, are the same as the other plant-based diets: heart health, diabetes, and cancer, in particular that colorectal cancer that is can be attributed to eating a lot of red meat in the diet. So just to kind of show you a little bit more about the flexitarian, U.S. News and World Report actually ranks diets every year. So they have And I didn't read what number they used this year, but usually like 40 to 60 experts, including medical doctors, nutrition PhDs, dietitians, look at all these different factors regarding the different diets, and then they rank them based on those factors. So the best overall diets, Mediterranean's at the top. DASH is one that we use for high blood pressure, dietary approaches to stop high blood pressure. It's very plant-based as well. And then Flexitarian was tied with the DASH diet. Best weight loss, Flexitarian was tied for first with Weight Watchers, so it ranks right up there. It also ranks for healthy eating. It's ranked as second behind DASH and Mediterranean, and then also easiest diets to follow. So it's real easy to follow. It's ranked third there. So again, they look at lots of diets too. So the rankings here really speak highly of a flexitarian type diet, especially for people that aren't completely committed to going, vegan or vegetarian, and still want to be able to, eat comfortably with their family and friends and include a little bit of the meat into the diet. So that was the challenge, just trying to explore some plant-based dinner options. And then I'll just briefly go through this week's slides. And this was more understanding plant-based proteins. And I did put a video out last weekend, I think it's on Saturday in your calendar, on like an introduction to tofu and also tofu Parmesan recipe. So I wanted to get a little bit of exposure to you guys for just using some soy products or tofu in your diet. But if you look at this slide here, I've got over here the complete sources of plant protein, meaning they contain all the essential amino acids that you need to make all the amino acids that your body uses. So soy is a great source. You have edamame, tempeh, soy milk, tofu, textured vegetable protein. Those are all soy sources. Hemp is also a great complete plant protein, and you noticed I probably have hemp days in there, and that's because hemp is a great nut or seed to get into the diet. And then buckwheat, usually we probably think of this more as making pancakes with it, and certainly can do that, but you can also use it as a grain, add it into granolas or into a porridge, or soba noodles are actually made with buckwheat, so those could be used in plant-based diets. Quinoa, full of protein, and it's a pseudo grain. I guess it's not really a true grain, but higher in protein, and it has a bitter taste to it. So if you're going to buy it, you might want to look for one that's triple rinsed, or you will just know that you'll have to rinse it yourself, and probably rinse it a good 3 times to get some of the saponins off of it, which give it that bitter taste. And quinoa has a cousin that's becoming more popular. It's called Kaniwa. That's Kaniwa, and that's another pseudo grain that can be used for as a high source of protein. And one of the advantages of it is it doesn't have the saponins or the bitter taste to it. So you can easily use that as kind of, well, I should say a substitute, but as another grain or pseudo grain source that you can use to get protein in your diet. Quinoa is quite a bit bigger than quinoa. Quinoa is going to be make a smaller, less grainy porridge, and quinoa will be more of it gets a little bit softer and looser, but it's a larger grain. And then the other 2 that are complete are going to be spirulina or chlorella, which are blue-green algae. And I'll go into that a little bit more here. These are just a list here of the 9 essential amino acids. And then here is how you would consider combining proteins. So for example, if you're having legumes or vegetables, you're lacking methionine. So you'd want to eat those with grains, nuts, or seeds. So again, it gets fairly easy from there if you remember that. So grains, you know, if you have them with legumes or nuts and seeds with legumes or corn with legumes, you're going to combine those to get complete proteins. So just a little bit more on soy. I just showing some different pictures here of the sources. So this first one would be the immature or the green soybean on the plant. And then when we shell that or we serve the pod, as you might have at an Asian restaurant, that's what we would call edamame. And I've got some salad recipes out there that use edamame that can help you increase that protein in the diet. If you ferment the soybeans with the Rhizopus oligosporus, you end up with the tempeh. And the tempeh is what you would use more as a crumble. So if you wanted, perhaps maybe you want to use it in a scramble or as a meat substitute. So you could put barbecue sauce on it and make it into more of a sloppy joe or a barbecue type sandwich. That's generally what they would use tempeh for. Soy milk is just extracted from the dry soybeans. And then to make tofu, they use soy milk, and then they actually use some coagulants with that. So think like the making of cheese, that process. So that's how you would make your different types of tofu. And then there's texture vegetable protein, which is made with soy, and that can be used and added to a lot of different foods. You could buy that, you know, at the store in the health market, and that can help increase the protein in your diet. And then there's also, you know, soy nuts, which a lot of times you might find flavored with different seasonings. There's the tofu parmigiana recipe that's also on the Pinterest page, and I did make a video of that's posted last Saturday. And then just going through other complete sources of protein here, we've got the hemp seed. Again, a lot of recipes on Hemp Day. You can find recipes at Manitoba Harvest. That's one of the companies that I buy my hemp seed from. And then you can also just add it to different foods to increase that protein amount. This is what buckwheat would look like, the buckwheat groats, and it's often ground into flour, or you can use again to make granolas or porridge or different foods like that. And also the soba noodles that you find on the shelf are made with buckwheat. So that's a nice alternative noodle for people who are gluten-free that need to stay away from gluten. And then quinoa, this is what it looks like rinsed. There are different colors of quinoa as well. There's red and black. And then just, it's pretty simple to make. You just put your amount of quinoa in with 2 parts of water and then cook that until the water's absorbed. And again, you would need to rinse it if it's not pre-rinsed. Otherwise, you'll get a little bit of a bitter taste to it, which might ruin your recipe or the flavor of your food that you're looking at. Other complete proteins are spirulina and chlorella. These are blue-green algae, and you may have heard of those, maybe not. They become more and more popular. Sea vegetables have become more and more popular. But these two in particular can help with lowering blood sugar, improving heart health, and generally for lowering blood sugar, I know there's a dosage of about 1 to 2 grams per day. Spirulina is higher in vitamin B1, which is thiamine, and higher in copper. So if you would have any type of deficiency in thiamine, which is common with alcoholics, or in copper, which could be because maybe you're getting too much zinc in your diet, because those kind of work together, then spirulina might be a good thing to add into your diet. But overall, I recommend chlorella because it's higher in all the other nutrients, and it also has B12 that is absorbable by our bodies, where spirulina, the B12 in there is what they call a pseudo B12, so it's not as readily as absorbable. So if you're wanting to use these types of things, I generally would add the chlorella or the spirulina to maybe a green smoothie. So something with kiwi, bananas, mango, whatever you want to throw in there, and some green leafies. And then that kind of blends in with that taste. So you probably wouldn't take more than maybe a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon at a time. And just when you're combining proteins, they've been doing this for centuries. So again, that table here and just some ideas, beans and rice, we've all heard of that. Beans and cornbread. So again, you're putting your grains and your legumes together. Hummus has been around for a long time. So that has sesame seed in it, which is a legume and beans, and black bean brownies with nuts. If you added nuts in there, that would make that a complete protein. There's a lot of recipes out there with bean burgers with nuts also. Succotash is, corn and beans. If you're to make, a taco or enchilada, you're using, you can use a whole grain tortilla and then wrap your beans in that. So you're getting the grain and the beans and vegetables, sweet potatoes and rice. It's a good combination. Sweet potatoes and wild rice is real good as well. White bean oatmeal, I'll show a recipe for that. And then falafel with a sesame seed dressing or sauce can also be a complete protein. So just some of those things that have been around for a long time. So people in the past are way smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. They've already invented a lot of this stuff. I have not tried this recipe yet, but I'd like to. It's oatmeal, and then you use a white bean like a Great Northern or a cannellini bean. And then there's also recipes out there, like black bean brownie recipes that are out there. There's white bean muffin and cookie recipes as well. And then our last challenge is, just making a main dish that is combining proteins. So that kind of summarizes what we've covered the last 2 weeks. And do you have any other questions? Let's see. Oh, you like fish. That's good. So you will probably do well if you like to want to continue to include fish in your diet. Yeah, the flexitarian. And again, I tell people we're exploring these plant-based diets. So, some days or sometimes I might go a week or two and actually be, vegetarian or vegan. I've even gone vegan for weeks at a time. But then, life kind of gets in the way, or you get to a family reunion or something with friends. And then I think it is good just to kind of be flexible. So I think that's the benefit of that flexitarian diet. And again, maybe you don't want to take a lot of supplements and you want to include fish in your diet as well. So again, there's no judgment here. It's looking at your diet and what's best for you and your health, and but trying to, again, include more plant-based foods in the diet. And I think that's really important for managing disease and managing our weight as well, and also feeling good and looking good. So all those things can be very helpful.